Hey, welcome to Combat Vet Vision. This is a great platform, I think, for our vets, for sponsors, supporters, volunteers, and those that really want to just tell their story and businesses that help out in a lot of different things. You got me, Aaron Siebert, retired Navy chief, lucky to be alive after being hit with a mortar round, April of 2006. And you got JB, Chef JB, world-renowned chef. Go ahead, JB, introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Aaron. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, it's good to see you as always. This is just becomes our great platform where we get to kind of talk about things and get a lot of different things out, right?
Yep. Get to see other people's views and their story, which is what we need to do. It's they've had enough of our faces. We need some new faces.
All right.
It's always good.
Yeah, JB's he's also, world renowned chef as well as Coast Guard vet. And we do a lot for the nonprofit world of bringing a lot of information to those that need it through the VTRC, Warrior Built PTSD Foundation of America, Recon Chief Incorporated, and so much more. And Brian Colburn behind the scenes, pushing all the buttons, making things happen. We're going to get to some cool information at the end of this to kind of just brief kind of some of the stuff that we've been working on throughout the week, JB and I, and different things. So, but my guest today, Justin Meeks, United States Army vet. Him and I have known each other now for, I want to say, the last 2 years. He's out of Colorado Springs area or the Colorado area. Justin, how you doing, brother?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Great to see you.
Great. Yeah.
Great to have you on deck. It's cool that this platform gives that a chance for you to kind of tell your story, and it's a lot of veterans might listen to it and actually get some sort of way they're gonna might relate to you or do something of that nature, or if they need some help and support, you're gonna be able to kind of guide them into some of the things that you've been able to attack and get involved with yourself. And I know you've been involved with yourself lately, so it's been really cool to have you in the war groups and being part of the PTSD Foundation of America's programs and even possible other programs that you'll be able to talk about. So, hey, get into it. Where are you from? Where did you come from? Why did you join the United States Army of all choices? I mean,
no, that's it's one of those things. I was at Home Depot this morning, buying home supplies, and she's like, "Thank you for your service." I was like, I believed everything the recruiter said. Don't. There's no reason to thank me, right? He said there's going to be girls, there's going to be yachts. Just join the military. It's simple. But yeah. No, it's no. So I'm born and raised in Florida. I've been born and raised there. I didn't really leave there until I was 18 years old. When I did join the Army, I actually enlisted the day before Christmas Eve in 2009. But the whole military thing kind of came to fruition with the movie The Guardian with Kevin Costner. And so that was like the Top Gun equivalent for the Coast Guard, right? Like, I did swimming in high school. I was a good swimmer. I loved being at the beach. I'm like, dude, how can I do this for the rest of my life? So I originally showed interest in the Coast Guard and, did my research, called a recruiter, and pretty much got laughed off the phone because that movie, just made the recruiting go through the roof. And it was about a 3 or 4 year wait list. I'm like, well, okay, I'm not going to do that. And so I was like, oh, what else am I interested in? I was like, well, I know I want to go to school for engineering. I like the way things work. I was like, the Corps of Engineers, that's pretty cool. I'll go into the Corps of Engineers. So I took all those nice ideas and went down to MEPS and tested. And they're like, you ain't being an engineer. I was like, okay. And they're like, yeah, you're going to go Intel. I'm like, what the fuck is Intel? And they're like, well, you're going to look at this. And, pretty much they sold me. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good. I think I just wanted to get out of the house. Both my parents were not ready to have a kid. And, I kind of was the afterthought for 18 years. So I think just kind of getting ready to get my life going was also in the back of my mind. But yeah, and then before you know it, I shipped off to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and then graduated there in what was it, July or August. So peak southern South Carolina heat was a whole nother animal. And then, believe it or not, there was enough people that I went to basic training with that were being trained for military intel that we had a charter flight from Fort Jackson, South Carolina to Fort Huachuca. And so I'd never been to Arizona before, but we flew into Tucson. I'm like, oh, nice. And they're like, oh no, we got to drive about another hour and a half south. I was like, what, to Mexico? And they're like, pretty much. And so Fort Huachuca, if you guys don't know, it's, I don't know, a rock's throw from the Mexican border. Anytime you leave post to go get, McDonald's or whatever, there's border patrol checkpoints everywhere. So that was a real, trial by fire as far as, what's going on in the world. But I was there for 7 months, doing, FTXs, live training, things like that. They had a pretty rigorous intel program, as far as, presentations, training, and this and that. And it's kind of funny to look back. I spent 6 or 7 months learning a job that I never actually did in the military. So it was, if you think about like in the Vietnam era days or the Cold War days, they have those guys with like the light tables and they have the big old satellite imagery, and then they've got the magnifying glass. Like, oh, okay, we've got a battalion of T-80s here, and now they're over here. That's what I learned. And then you get in the real world, they're like, that's cool, we do drones. And so like completely different pace, completely, it was pretty funny to me. And then I had done the reserves while I was going to school. And I ended up being trained as an 88 Mike because our battalion was being consolidated to headquarters. And so we actually convoyed from Birmingham, Alabama to Augusta, Georgia. So I'm an intel guy driving a truck. And so, I learned everything but my MOS the first probably year and a half, 2 years of the military, which was, it was nice, because, you had a little bit more breadth in the military, a little bit more usefulness. And someone's like, hey, go move that truck. You knew what to do. You weren't just a squint. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that derogatory term, squint. It's because that was what they call it.
I am not. I don't believe I've heard that one.
It's what they call the intel guys, because when they're overseas and they're deployed, they're in a nice little AC skiff, and then they come out in the sun and they squint, and so they're called squints. So that's the big, I guess knowledge drop for all you guys, non-intel guys.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I did, deployments. Kind of did. It was one of those jack of all trades, master of none. That was probably my 13 years in the military. It was every year was something new, whether it was balancing going to school in the reserves or being pulled to support SOCOM or whatever it was. Every year was a different journey, and so I like to say my 13 years was very unique. And I don't know if I would ever made it to 20. I ran into issues probably around 10 or 11 years of service. And kind of the military, their needs superseding my own, and them kind of saying, hey, that's cool, but you're going to do this. And so I was on autopilot for probably the past 2-3 years, and then my last 18 months with SOCOM was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. Looking back.
Dang.
When it's time, it's time.
Yeah, it's one of those things where my wife, I'll get out of bed and, she hears my back crack and all this stuff. And she's like, I thought I married a young guy. I was like, young in age. I mean, I've got probably, close to 60 or 70 years worth of mileage on this body. But, only being 34, some people are like, oh, you're young, you can do it. I'm like, dude, I'm broken.
Yeah. That's the military does have that habit of putting you through some ringers, and probably a lot more mileage and weight than you're ever gonna endure. And by the time you get out, you're just kind of wore down at times. But hey,
yeah,
talk about what was the best part about you finally getting involved in your job. And you said, you spent some time with SOCOM. I know you can't talk too much about it, but you talk about, how that, you talked about how that was the straw that broke the camel's back. What was it that made it so crazy on that?
I think it's, I always use the analogy, everyone loves sausage until you learn how sausage is made, and everyone's like, oh, I love freedom. This is great. And it's like, once you peek behind that curtain and see, what the Wizard of Oz actually is, it makes you, one, more grateful, but it's something that can't be unseen. And so, it's just, I think the highlight and also the low point of my military career was probably my time with SOCOM. To give you background, I had graduated college. I had just met my now wife, but I had met her, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks before I got a call from my unit saying, hey, you're limited to MOS. This MOB got picked up, and there's essentially no one else to go but you from our unit, so you got to go. And I'm like, oh, where is it? How long? And so, knowing her for 6, 7 weeks and then saying, hey, I'm going to go to North Carolina for 18 months and be over at Bragg was a big kind of eye opener for her. She tried to break up with me at a time. She's like, I'm not doing that. We're at a bar. And I remember this vividly. She goes to the bar crying. She's like, we're not dating anymore. I'm not doing this. And I'm like, well, what the hell? It's not my choice. So I moved everything that I had out of my Nashville apartment into a little little storage unit in Nashville, and put everything I had military wise and into my car and drove to Fort Bragg. Ended actually getting issued new gear there. We got probably one of the sickest Patagonia jackets I've ever worn, but I can't find it anywhere else but getting it issued. We were right there on the compound on Bragg, the compound within the base. We had to go through, search and seizures every time we had to get in there. But before we even had an opportunity to really do the mission, we had 3 months of what they called essentially weed out. And so I think we started with, I want to say 300 or 350 soldiers. And in the intel, rank doesn't mean as much as it does outside. Rank is more of a, pay grade. Everyone's got an opinion in military intel, and you don't take anyone's opinion more significant or less significant just based on their rank, right? So I always enjoyed that community. But there's about 350 of us, ranking from, captains all the way down to privates from all over the country. And we're doing basically just doing filters. We're doing assessments and psych evaluations. And I've done this before because there was an opportunity for me when I was deployed in Iraq to go do something similar. But I knew you don't lie about anything. If you lie or tell the half truth, they know. Like, these are the people that work for the CIA. I mean, they know all ifs, ands, or buts around it. So it gets to the point where I'm essentially writing paragraphs. They're like, have you ever paid for sex? And I was like, well, there's this one time before, I went to Iraq, like blah, 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 like probably way too much information. But basically you get to the point where we're all in the auditorium waiting to see who's getting pulled. And they're asking people after the psych eval, for in-person interviews. And I knew I had no shot of doing a personal interview because I didn't lie about anything. Whether it was good or bad, what you saw is what you got. And so everyone's stressing, like, oh man, do they know? Like, I was like, dude, if you told a half truth or something, they're gonna ping you and they're gonna be like, oh, this guy can't be trusted. But anyway, so I made it through the 300 guys or whatever it was. And I think it got down to about 60. And of those 60, we started doing typing tests. So with drones and all that community, it's all about, I would imagine that the future is going to be voice to text, which it's going to have its own curveballs, but it's all about how fast can you type, what you're seeing on the camera, and can you translate that into a document or a message for actionable items. And so like the first 3-4 weeks, we're just doing like online typing tests. And, so we end up going through that and like, okay, these 0.5% or whatever, or these 35 people, they make it on to stage 2. The other 35%, you type too slow, the door's behind you. Okay. So then they start going in, and they have like these backyard exercises where it's pretty much just the cadre, but they're outside, and they're doing certain stuff. Like one guy will get out of a truck, he might get in the truck, drive around, things like that, and you're narrating it. But then you're also talking to your senior advisor or your senior analyst, and kind of talking about what you're seeing. And so all this is going on, and so you kind of got, I don't know, I think it was 8 weeks. 8 weeks of kind of crawling, and they're like, okay, these, of these 35, I think 25 are actually good, solid people. You'll go on to the next phase. Then you get introduced to the compound on base where you're like, hey, I just went through security, I just need to get on base. So like, that's cool. I need to search your car. Like what? And they're taking everything out. Yeah. So we're on the JSOC compound on Bragg. And, there's this massive, I don't know, 8 or 9 story building right next to the airfield, where, our master sergeant at the time he'd come in one day with German fatigues and then flip-flops. The next day he'd wear an Australian hat with, I don't know, some Australian something with a Foster's t-shirt. Like, I was just like, where the fuck am I? But it was that community where it was like, they always said the tip of the spear, right? Like, when you're doing things that matter and you're in that, high, adrenaline environment, no one's gonna be like, hey man, did you shave today? Like that big army nonsense is left at the door, and it's just, it's actionable items. So all in all, I think it was about 3 or 4 months of kind of just assessments and training. And then you get into the floor, and the floor, the only way I can describe it is a very fancy, very high-tech Buffalo Wild Wings. And there's just TVs everywhere. There's clocks everywhere, 9,000 things going on. And they're like, here's your computer. You're like, okay. You get assigned to a team. Then you're on, so we did Panama schedule. So we would do 3 days on, 4 days off, and then 4 days on, 3 days off. And then they were 12-hour shifts. And then every 3 months you would switch from days to nights. And so it was, you're talking about, I was only working 36 hours one week, but the next I'm working 48. And it's not like I'm just 9 to 5. You're working those 12 hours. Like it's the point where like you pack your lunch, we would do food runs towards the end, because sometimes birds would be down based on weather and things like that. And those were the fun nights, because it'd be like, all right, we're going to put on Lord of the Rings. Then you had Lord of the Rings on 2,000 TVs, and you're just, because the weather's down, you can't do anything. But the amount of server space that they had for movies was also astounding. You could go through, alphabetical by genre, by 1920s, 1930s, like anything you wanted. It was there. Yeah. I think I watched the whole Harry Potter season when we got there was a hurricane that came through North Carolina, and we had swapped all our assets ownerships over to, I think it was Florida. But essentially we had just did a handoff, and then we were in basically sleeping in the building to ensure servers didn't flood, anything happened, we could immediately take action. So we were essentially had, 3 or 4 days of just whatever you wanted to do. And I had never seen anything but the first Harry Potter. So I ended up get to watch all 8 Harry Potters and all the Lord of the Rings and all this stuff. And I'm just babysitting servers. But again, that's kind of the fun part. The reality was what the mission was, what we were doing there, and kind of knowing the news before it happened, being in a bad mood, or, not wanting to talk to my then fiance when I got off, shift, just because of being brain dead or emotionally detached from what happened on during shift. It was tough, you're almost living like a secret life, because till this day you can't talk about anything, until 2045 I can write a book. 25 years from when I'm done, I can write a book, and everything will be declassified. And I don't know if anyone's going to want to read it, but I can give some insight, but who knows? You know, the way warfare is changing, what I did might be obsolete in 5 years.
Exactly. You know, it's funny as I listen to you, you know, talk. It reminds me of when I went to Iwo Jima for, I think it was the 50th anniversary, and we helped all these guys from that flew into Iwo Jima just to take a tour. And you know, I had this corpsman that we were taking around, and he was, you know, crying at times, but seeing all these beaches and different things, you know, and Iwo Jima is just such a huge part of our history. And but that's the first place I watched John Wayne's movie, you know, what was it called? The
Sands of Iwo Jima.
Yeah, Sands of Iwo Jima. And I was like, holy cow, man, I'm watching Sands of Iwo Jima on Iwo Jima. So,
Yeah.
and you just, you know, out of all the times that you're just like busting your ass, working hard, people that may not understand that downtime kind of has this very weird peak. Like you can actually feel the emotion as you talk about it right now, because you're like, man, we worked so hard. That having that downtime to actually take that break and do something cool means something, right? And now you're thinking about like, yeah, it's really hard to watch warfare now, and it's like, dude, what is the technology's happening so fast? Like it's really weird to think that, you know, our war situation is going to be obsolete, and we pretty much fought wars the same way for, I mean, hundreds of years now. Ships, you know, to landing aircraft on deck, to soldiers on the ground doing their thing, to the old style intel, you know, modern intel, because we have cameras. But now you're like, whoa, that's going to be obsolete. It's all drones, and, you know, machines are going to be fighting machines kind of thing. Push buttons. I mean, it's it's going to be a video game in real life. You know, I don't know. It's hard to imagine, you know, Terminator being a real possibility someday. Just saying.
It's nuts. And I think that's kind of where, you know, I kind of have a lot of skepticism when it comes to AI, is because, you know, for 18 months, I would get a message saying, hey, that's a bad guy. I'm like, says who? You know, where is this coming from? Right. And so it's like, now I'm asking a computer to tell me what to do. I'm like, okay, hold on. Like, what's the channels of this all going through? Right. Like, and, you know, I feel like a lot of people nowadays like, oh, the computer will tell me. I was like, well, the computer will tell you anything. Doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people, you and I, Chief, were talking about the other day. You go on YouTube and it's like, oh yeah, Russia just nuked Washington, D.C. And I'm like, all right, if you are completely like a hermit and detached from reality, and you go on YouTube, you might put more weight into that than someone's like, okay, this is fake. Like,
yeah, literally yesterday I saw that, you know, an aircraft carrier got hit and it was like sinking, right? Totally fake news. And it said it had like 700 tanks on board. Aircraft carriers don't carry tanks, for one. They carry aircraft. So, I mean, and the picture though, AI is creating pictures that look so real that you can't even tell. I mean, it's getting really kind of crazy, but you're right. If you're a hermit, you get on, you would think the whole world is like in chaos, and you're like,
yeah,
whoa, what's going on?
We have a rule in my family, where I'm trying to make it a rule, that whenever we get together and someone brings up current events or politics, you cannot regurgitate some talking head from some network. You have to do your own research, and you have to come up with your own opinion. Because so many times you just see people and just, they're chameleons. They just say the same thing over. I'm like, this could be completely fictitious. And now you've got a million people buying in on it like it's the gospel. And
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think that's really cool that your family's doing that. Hey, you got to do your own research, come up with your own ideas, and determine, you know, do you really have enough knowledge to make a decision saying, yes, the aircraft carrier is sinking off the coast of Iran somewhere. That's not even true.
Right.
But, you know,
right.
You know,
a quick Google search, you can find out it's fictitious, right? But I mean, without that, you're just,
yeah.
Well, you're developing thinkers. You know, you actually have to think about it. You know, people sometimes tell me off the wall stuff, and I say, "Where did you hear that?" You know, and it's like, "Oh, CNN. I watch it every day," and I'm going, "Oh no."
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's why I get really, really caught up in my own head, and get high strung at the airport. Because I see people, and I mean, one, the airport's a large concentration of multi-background people. Some people are considerate. Some people are, a family of 18 walking hand in hand, blocking the row from everyone else. And you see some people, and you're like, all right, that person is not capable of critical thought. That person is just feeding the government taxes, and they do not care or have any ambition to change it. But then you have other people where you're like, all right, I don't want to just be spoon-fed information. I don't want to be told you can't do this. Like, hey, I want to do this, blah, blah, blah. I want to, make something of my life. But again, it's just the critical thinking and, kind of hand-in-hand common sense is rapidly declining. It's not as common as it should be.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of that, when you got out and you started your transition, how did that look for you? And obviously, you started off with talking about, hey, I want to be an engineer, and they're like, nope, you're going to Intel.
Yeah.
But now you're a civil engineer, and we'll get into that a little bit. But talk about your transition and getting out of the military. Obviously, 13 years, you obviously are going to make it a career, but like you said, just spun you in the wrong direction, and ended up having to go through these processes. And now that you've been out, how was the process of transitioning out of the military and everything?
It was honestly anticlimactic. I had done, I think I did 18 months on reserves on the back end after I left Bragg. But I pretty much told my reserve unit that I was being med boarded. Hey, I'm going to show up to drill. I'm going to get paid, but for the most part, I'm useless. I'm in the process of being medically retired. So I was like, hey, I'll start my VA paperwork, this and that. And I think that's kind of what really started the transition, was because I knew I was kind of flirting with getting out. And I was like, oh, I'll just go talk to the VA and see what's going on. And they're like, oh, so what are you claiming? And I was like, I don't know. My friends that we were all there, we were advised to claim PTSD and moral injury and, depression and all that stuff. I was like, I think it's all bullshit. I was like, oh, well, we can sit you with a therapist. And so I go into a therapist and talk for, feelings for about an hour and a half. And then 3 months later, I get a letter in the mail and they're like, yeah, you're 100%. What did I say in that room, and what's on my record? But yeah, so that was kind of the real starting the wheels turning. And then I think I started coming with terms with the further away I was from, what I did at Bragg, the harder it was for me to watch, war movies, or my feelings were kind of all kind of jacked up. My wife would, for whatever reason, be crying and try to be seeking some sort of emotional response from me, and nothing, right? Like, so that was kind of a red flag in my mind. It was pretty, I don't want to say easy, but again, it was just anticlimactic. I got the VA, I got plugged into therapy, some groups. I was part of multiple group studies throughout the VA the past 6 years, which, a little bit of a tangent. I kind of have I don't know if it distaste, but I have a little bit of a bone to pick with the VA, as everyone does. Because I'd be part of a 6 or 7 month group therapy with veterans with, multiple, therapeutics. Some were on ketamine, some were whatever. But essentially, it was vets just getting in the room and talking for about an hour and a half. And the therapists were there to kind of guide the conversation. But for the most part, it was just us, like, on the PTSD Foundation. We're just in a room, just kind of whatever's on the mind is what we were talking about. And so the VA got their data marks after 6 or 7 months, and they're like, all right, see you later. There was no continuation. There was nothing. The program was dropped. I tried to keep in contact with some of the guys, but I think without that structure, it was kind of hard for them to kind of meet. And I was like, hey, we can meet for dinner or whatever. And it just kind of fell apart. And then, I bounced around to probably 3 or 4 different therapists, just because they were all being transferred or whatever the case was. Finally, I was like, dude, I'm just going to go on my own. I'll pay it out of pocket. And And so I went independent, and the first therapist I got, she's like, yeah, I'll take you. Things were going great. She was doing the EMDR therapy. So I was doing that. And then getting momentum, getting going. 6 months into it, she's like, I'm retiring. So it was about, I don't know, 6 or 7 different groups, therapists. And I was like, dude, I'm done. So I took about 2 or 3 months off therapy at all. I still took the medication, but just kind of, went cold turkey. And then, I started getting in a little bit of, online gambling, risky behavior, drinking, things like that. And it got to the point where my wife's like, hey, I think you should go back to therapy. And that's when I reached out to Eric, at the PTSD Foundation, and it's been very similar to those VA groups that I've been missing, and I've been looking. So it's one of those things where it's a great outlet, I'm surprised how many times someone can say something that they think personally is so off the wall. They're like, there's no way anyone's going to relate to this. And everyone in the group is like, yep, I get what you're saying. And, it's just that bonding and that familiarity with, trauma or whatever you want to call it, where you're like, hey man, I was sitting at a red light today and I just had the feeling of fuck it. Right. Like, I've been there, and so, it's, I don't know. It's been good, but again, it's been a journey. My wife is one of a kind. I definitely outkick my coverage. She keeps me in line, and our first son has been a blessing. I'm terrified of the day when he is old enough to realize that I was in the military, and he's going to want to, hey dad, tell me some stories and this and that. And I have no idea how you even start to have that conversation, because he's going to come at it from a respect, interest standpoint. And I don't want to be 110% dismissive, so how do you divulge information without terrifying the kid?
Yeah. It's hard to think back when you were a kid and the information that you retained and how much of it you really wanted to hear. Right. And, when I look at how I processed information then and now, with the brain just matures to a level where it can accept a lot of things or take you down a rabbit hole and make you on like some sort of tight line that you accept everything and nobody's going to tell you otherwise, which is really kind of crazy. That's not the way I think, but
right.
But you can always refer your kid to this podcast again, and you could be like, hey, check this out first. This will give you my story. You'll be able to hear some of that. But,
right.
it is very weird. But it's great that you're thinking that too, that you're thinking about your kid, you're thinking about your wife. And obviously that's your circle all the time. I know you talk about some of these things a lot. And you're always trying to figure out how to navigate yourself, to make small improvements here and there. Get in touch with your feelings and stuff. And I think you made a really cool point when you said, you were searching for these groups, the camaraderie. It's not all about just like, woe is me, I'm jacked up, or it's about the camaraderie. I think that's the most important part you can take from any of these groups. But the other thing that's really important is like, if you have a therapist, that's one person you got to rely on for a long time. And the minute they say they got to retire, your whole world might be shattered if that's your dependability factor, right? So that's why it's important to get a hold, not just that. What else are you doing in your life to make your world better and productive in your military like world, right? And so having these groups are super important. The other thing that's important is like, hey, are you still going out on dates with your wife? Are you still taking care of the balance of the family and then your work, right? And your work requires a lot of travel out of you. And I know you get burned out from that because shoot, you didn't travel in the military or anything. Just saying.
Yeah, no.
No, but see, you can relate to all these things, right? Like, damn, how's your camping trip going to be? Well, I don't know because I camped like all the time in the military. So I'm pretty much camped out, I don't know.
Yeah.
So when you look at these things that you're talking about, I think it's important so that the audience might capture some of that stuff. They may not know the dynamics that we're talking about, or your son, he's going to be like, Dad, why do you, why is it so hard to be at a a red light for too long. It's like, because the cars start stacking up and people start gathering around. You know, we used to dismount our vehicle when we got stuck in traffic in country and fix bayonets. Like,
Yeah.
you know, did you ever fix bayonets? Yeah, I've seen it happen. I even had to do a report on a guy that cut himself while he's sticking his bayonet on his rifle while, you know, and he later on had to get, you know, a disability rating for it. So he's like, hey, Chief, can you write me this report, you know, from 10 years ago? So there's all these important factors that you're bringing up. And I think it's really cool, especially the family dynamic, this transition piece, having therapy, being in groups, you know, and groups isn't for everybody, but I'm glad it's for you. I'm glad you're able to talk about these things.
Well, I think it's just, you get out what you put in, right? I mean, it just goes back to the military. You had people that were, you know, 10, 20-year, you know, soldiers and barely made staff sergeant. It's like, if you don't put what you want to get out of it in, you're not going to go anywhere. And so I think that's kind of what group is. I mean, there's some times where, you know, I think it's we kind of pass the torch on, depending on who's got a busier week and who needs to vent more. And I think some people recognize that. We're like, all right, this man just needs to talk for 30 minutes and everyone's just going to take a back seat. You know, but, you know, it's just, I like, you know, and Eric did a good job, you know, because I had originally brought the subject up of kind of working through that book. I know we originally just kind of got on and we're like, hey, let's do this. I was like,
yeah,
hey,
this is the Combat Trauma Healing Manual,
yeah,
which is the blue manual that's used by the PTSD Foundation of America. Yeah. And your suggestion, we brought this into the fold. It was great. It's great.
It's just enough structure, you know, to let the conversation go anywhere it wants to go. And it's just, I think, you know, I'm still having a little bit of, you know, where was God, you know, for all you know, listeners, that was a chapter in the book, Where Was God? You know, and I think that's one thing I still kind of hold on to, is because, you know, there's days I'll be having a good day and then something out of the, you know, 1,000,000 percentile of luck, just, you know, I'll drop a you know, coin and it'll roll down and, you know, 10 feet and then goes into the gutter, right, in the inlet. I'm like, come on, really? Like that's the luck we're going to have today? Like things like that happen. I'm like, come on, like you're just messing with me at this point. And so the good Lord and I, you know, have conversations, and, you know, I'm like, I don't know what I did. I don't know, you know, what I'm supposed to do, but, you know, my buddy and I, my best friend, we actually played golf, down in Gulfport 2 weeks ago. And, he's far more spiritual aligned than I am. But we've been friends for 16 years. So he knows me good, bad, face value. But him and I were talking about, you know, praying and you know, religion. And, you know, I was like, I think I'm more spiritual. Religion's kind of man-made in my mind. So I'm more on a spiritual bandwagon. But I was like, you know, I think it's kind of funny, you know, when everyone prays, whoever you pray to, they're like, oh, give me patience. And you think you're just going to get a button and, oh, I'm patient. It's like, no, I don't want opportunities to be patient, because I'm not going to be able to be patient. I want patience. Just give me patience. And so like him and I were talking about, especially with a toddler, like, oh, you know, you'll pray in the morning or at night. You're like, all right, just grant me patience. And then the first thing in the morning is like screaming their head off because they want this snack instead of that one. And you're like, this is not what I meant by give me patience. Like, come on. So
yeah, you get an answer, but it's not the answer you really
right.
want. You're like
right.
Patience, man. This is where I got to learn how to, you know, use my patience. I'm asking you to not make it so I have to use patience too much, right?
Yes,
but I think you know, and it comes down to free will too. Like, right? It's like, yeah, God's there to, you know, however you want to look at it, right? But he's definitely not going to step in and be like, hey, I'm gonna prevent this car from hitting you if you step out into the street. You know, it's like,
right.
Hey, I made sidewalks so you can walk on sidewalks, you know, or you know, however you want to look at your day, right? You're like, oh, well, you asked for patience. Well, now you have to think about it, right? You're like, shoot, I asked him for patience, but I guess he wants me to actually exercise my patient ability.
Right.
So, Justin, you know, at least you're talking to him. How many people don't talk to him, you know, and kind of walk through life and head in the clouds? And, you know, one thing about groups is, you know, doing a group meeting is you're not alone. You know, there's other people with you facing some of the things you face, and they show you maybe there's a way out. You know, that's why we share and we do groups. It's important, you know, and that's, I mean, especially, you know, you said, how do you tell your kid really what's going on? You know, do you really want to lay that on him? You know, so you know, when I was younger, it was the thing to go into the military. I mean, I played war when I was a kid, you know. I mean, we got inventive and really wanted to play war, but you know, when life came to reality, I went in the Coast Guard because I didn't want to play war. You know, war has consequences, you know,
Right.
and good or bad or indifferent. I am jealous of you though, because you had all those movies to watch. I used to sit on a Coast Guard cutter in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, halfway between San Francisco and Hawaii, in case they had to ditch back in the 70s, early 70s. And we had movies every night, but you only got like 30 movies when you went out for 30 days to sit and float for 30 days. So usually on the ones that we watched going out 7 days, we transferred to the ship when we transferred them things. And they transferred us some new movies. And that's how we kind of put different joy back into our lives. So, you know, it's sort of like I said, push a button now. That's how we're going to fight. That's how we're going to watch movies. You push a button and, you know, they stream down, and instead of putting out a can and put it on a projector and actually showing it.
And that's another kind of battle that my wife and I are facing. I think Chief and I talked about this a couple months ago, but we're trying to teach my son patience, and I know you're like, dude, he's 2 years old. That's not going to happen. But the thing that I found is you know, my wife and I were a generation where technology was incremental, but we were kind of the bridge between old cars and new technology, right? And so we had AOL, we had AIM, you know, AOL Instant Messenger, but you couldn't call your friend if they were on the internet, right? And so like there was a little bit of suffering that came with that learning, you know. And you know, I think the biggest phone was, you know, a flip phone, and now we're going back to the flip phones. But you know, there was a certain amount of, well, okay, I want to listen to my iPod, but I have a crappy cassette player in my car. I have to buy 4 adapters, and now I can listen to it in my cassette player. You know, so that kind of taught us to appreciate what we have. Whereas my son, you know, he's going to grow up in Instacart, DoorDash, Amazon. Like you press a button, it's there. Like there's no commercials now. When there's an ad on YouTube for, you know, whatever the 15, 20 seconds they have, he's like, more. It's like, son, just take a deep breath. These are called commercials. Okay. Usually they lasted about 15 to 20 minutes. You know, like I remember, you know, if you watched a movie on cable, I don't know, it'd probably take you an hour longer than the actual movie with all the commercials that mixed in. You know, so if it's a 3-hour movie, it takes you 4 hours to watch it. And then half the time they cut out, you know, the best parts just to make it fit. You know, so it's like we're trying not to, you know, shield his eyes from what's available to him, but at the same time, we want him to appreciate it. You know, it's like, don't be one of those people where it's like, I just want more and more and more, and just, you know, peak consumerism, right? Like I could DoorDash Pizza Hut to my, you know, door for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 3 months straight, right? Like, don't do that. Like that's, you know, I understand if you're doing things and you're busy, hey, you know, order pizza, but it's going to be a real battle, because I think, you know, to go back to Chef's point about, you know, whole playing war, some of the kids, I guess, play, I don't know if they play war at daycare, but they learn to, you know, shoot, you know, pow pow, and we've never taught them that. And you know, I'm like, all right, he's just being a kid. He's just being a kid. Like, don't ruin his childhood. He's just being a kid. But like, I've got a whole other context when, you know, someone's saying bang bang or pow pow, right? And it's like, how do you differentiate those two worlds? You know, because when he's saying something, emotionally, my heart's probably, beating 1,000 miles a minute, and it's like, he's just a kid. He doesn't understand, so those are the kind of things that I guess make the transition a little bit harder, just because you have those parenting moments, but you have to take almost 2 steps back, because you have to remove yourself from, the anger or frustration. And then you have to remove yourself from that, because you're amplified such a high level. You have to kind of come back to a normal person's level before you can kind of make a decision.
Yep.
Great points. Hey, Justin. Yeah. Thanks for sharing so many things, man. We got a couple more minutes, for you to share any last thoughts. And then, if anybody wants to get a hold of Justin, or you want to talk to him for some reason, you can do it through me. And, any information you want to put out for that too. I mean, obviously you've came a long way in so many different directions, right? It's so cool that you're here to talk about some of the things that you're talking about. So thanks a lot for sharing all this stuff too, brother.
Definitely. Of course. Yeah. I don't do any social media. The only thing I have is about LinkedIn, and that's really more for business purposes. But the photo that's on this podcast artwork is my LinkedIn profile photo, so it should be easy to find. But no, it's been great. It's amazing how quick 45 minutes goes when you're chatting about yourself. But yeah, it's been insightful, and we'll see where the rest of the day takes me.
Well, definitely. Hey, thanks for sharing, Justin. And if you could just talk about your job now as a civil engineer. Are you happy that you were finally able to be an engineer of some sort? And how's that looking for you?
It's good. So for the audience, I do a little bit of residential, commercial, and then federal work on VA campuses around the country. So it's kind of a little bit of full circle moment for me, where I'm being treated by the VA and this and that, but I can also help improve that infrastructure for future veterans. So I work for a veteran-owned company. The CEO is veteran service disabled. I think there's about 3 of us total in the company of 60, 65. But my team's mostly veterans. I run a kind of tight ship, and the president kind of tells me to kind of take a deep breath sometimes when I see people just, messing around. And I think it's just that military work ethic where I'm like, dude, if you don't look busy, I'm going to find something for you to do. And, so that in the professional world has its pros and cons, sometimes it's like, dude, I was just getting water. I'm like, hurry up. So, it's good. Again, I think the biggest thing that makes me, kind of wake up or at least go to bed and say, hey, I've accomplished and, I made an impact on the day, is that the VA facilities are continuing to improve, be expanded. There's their own challenges with building new infrastructure on old VA sites, because they don't keep as-built. Typically, it's a bar napkin that says, "Hey, I think there's a water line over there," and then we typically find it when we start building. So, again, it's gratifying, but it's also frustrating because it's the VA, and they've got their own way of doing things.
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, Justin, thanks a lot, brother. I appreciate you, and thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Justin.
Hey, Chef JB's Kitchen. Let's go into that for a little while, man. How you doing, brother? And what's going on with you?
Everything's going good. We're working along. For Justin, I know he's in the waiting room, probably to talk to us later if he's around. But the best thing that I heard about spirituality and religion, the difference is religion is the guy sitting in church, looking outside, dreaming about fishing. And spirituality is on Sunday, the guy sitting in the rowboat on the lake, looking out over God's creation and seeing all the beauty and the joy. And that's the difference. So I'm more spiritual, I think, than religious, but I do believe in God, and I believe in talking to him. And sometimes he gives me the right answer, sometimes not so right, but I know he is right eventually. So, that's just life on life's terms. The Veterans Transition Resource Center is moving right along. One thing I'd like to say is it's not only for veterans. We make it for the veterans and their families because it's important. There's not a lot of 501c3 groups for veterans that really work with families. And, that's really important that some of us out here are looking after the children and the wives, and how do we help them transition when veterans are coming out, or when the whole family transitions. It's not just the veterans, it's the family. Like he said, how do you tell your 2-year-old, how do you, the patience and all the things related to it. So it's just real important. Like our guests the last couple of weeks have been MST, our medical,
Military sexual trauma, MST.
yep, MST. And, that's real. And they have to deal with that. I mean, how would somebody like that tell their doctor, Well, I'm not in the military anymore. Well, why aren't you in the military, Mom? Well, things happen that were way beyond my control. And so I chose to get out, and look at him. I mean, he had 13 years, 7 more years he could have retired with a full pension, but it was time. I mean, God tells us that, all of us. I mean, I was in 3 years, and that was long enough. It was supposed to be 4. I got really sick, and it was beyond my control. And it got to the point where working those kind of duties, where you're working extreme hours on the Oregon coast, in damp weather, in cold weather, 10 months out of the year, and it wasn't conducive to my lungs or my health, and it got to be to the point I spent more time in the hospital than I did in a duty station. So when that comes reality, you just go with it, but the veterans, the VA has always been there for me. They helped set me up. My training as a chef, OJT. I was the first one to go through it, and it just, without that, I don't know. God gave me this ability to feed the masses, and now I can give it back to the community that I live in, and that's what's important. Chef, Chief, we go through a lot of things, and it's always good to give back. And sometimes a lot of people ask me to give back, and I don't have the time to give back because I'm doing other things. So, when to say no. Sometimes I should say no and I don't, and then it bites me in another way. So today I was trying to get here to get on the podcast, and I had to go to an accountant. I had to go get some work done so that I could get paid for some things that I'm doing with the restaurant and training the young adults, workforce development for St. Jude's Ranch. So, it's like I have so much stuff to do, and then 1 o'clock is the show.
Yeah,
but I was here at 12:59. I did make it today.
That's right. That's right. And that restaurant's the Blooming Bistro, just so for the audience. That's what
the Blooming Bistro. It's a
great place
development for young kids. And it's like wonderful, and it keeps me busy. I'm not sitting at home watching TV thinking, what it should have, could have been. I'm out making a difference, and that makes me happy. And with you and I together, we're making a difference, and that's what's important.
Definitely. And there's so many others, not just us. We have such an awesome team of people that we surround ourselves with that are out there turning and burning. I mean, with all the organizations that I'm part of, with all the people that Chef has on his boat, there's a huge team of people doing some incredible things out there to make things really awesome. And you have to find those things, because that's part of your therapy. That's part of what you're going to do for your life, because the VA is not going to have every answer for you. They're going to be able to fix what is fixable, but it's up to us to have the right attitude to get engaged with our lives so that we could find some enjoyment in the ways that we're going to move forward or backwards in life. And those backwards movements are really tough. And if you're falling back, you need to find those resources that are going to pull you forward. Or push you in a direction that's more positive for you. Not for me, not for Chef, not for anybody else, but for you. That's an important piece.
What was Thursday? The girls called me from the honor flight, and they said, "Are you going to be at the restaurant?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd be there at lunchtime." So the Belinda and Donna and Gretchen, they all came in, and they gave me a picture of the honor flight from 2025 last November, and it was signed by all the guys. I got it hanging in my bedroom. I told my wife I had to hang it. I'm not going to hang that. I said hang it. But anyway, she knew I was serious then, so she helped me hang it. I let her pick the spot. But, it just really blessed. I mean, I was crying. I mean, I don't, me, I don't do a lot of stuff just kudos or whatever. I just do them, and then I walk, I mean, it's like, that's why I don't do a lot of nonprofits for a long period of time, because then it becomes your program and not God's program. And also, other people need to be blessed, by doing some of that work. And if you're doing it, then they can't be blessed, So I try, I founded some things over the last 37 years here in Las Vegas, Chef for Kids and some other things. And, it's like, I walked away from it for like 4 or 5 years so other people would pick it up and run with it, and it grew and grew, and now I'm back with them, and it's all great. So I'm very happy.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing, Chef. And if you want to get a hold of Chef JB, you can definitely do it through the show.
Yes.
And any other words on how to get a hold of you, Chef, feel free to put that out there too.
You know what? I'm going to start on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, but we're going to start getting a little bit more, and because a lot of things are happening, and so social media. I'm an old guy. Social media is new to me, so not always so great, but you know what? You always show me the way, so that's good.
Hey, we're going to work on some stuff. You can see my LinkedIn tree or link tree and get a whole bunch of information about myself too. So that's really important. And I do want to just say, it's awesome that this podcast exists, so that those people, these entities, these businesses that are supporting our veteran stories are getting out there. This platform allows you to kind of come in here and highlight some of the things that you're doing and God's doing with you, and the things that are incredibly helpful to our veterans, and the sponsors, what they're doing for our veterans. There's some incredible sponsors out there doing some incredible things for these nonprofit orgs, and I'm always amazed at our ability to just be able to be involved in life in a way that can happen if you're a veteran and you want to get involved, there's so many organizations doing those incredible things to do it. It's just awesome. I was go ahead, Jeff. You got something else?
Good point. Yeah, we need help. We always need help. We need veterans that need someplace to hang their hat or something to do 1 or 2 days a week. You know, the VTRC works with a lot of different groups, and we need some younger blood. You know, you either grow or you go, and we need to grow. We're at a growing period now where we're starting to do a lot of good in the community and starting to touch a lot of different veteran groups, and we want to do that more so. So anybody out listening to our podcast that live in Las Vegas, they're a veteran, even if you're not a veteran, you want to help out, come see us. We're always willing to talk to you.
Outstanding, Chef. Well, hey, I just want to say, you know, I was on a podcast last night. It's called The Unstoppable Network. The Unstoppable Network. You could find it all over the YouTube, wherever you look at. It's Dorothy and Dr. Jay Royster was on that as well. Dr. Jay Royster was on my podcast not too long ago, two guests ago, and she's part of that too. So it was really great to be on that and give my story. It was interesting to see me go through that 45 minutes and realize, whoa, I just went through this 45 minutes and I haven't even gotten to the good stuff of my story. I need to get on it. So it was great to tell my story. I know it sparks up a lot of thoughts and different processes, but those processes are important to go through in our mental health. So I would look at this as a therapeutic effect. If you get on here and tell your story in some way and fashion, if you're worried about telling it, and your story doesn't have to be epic. It doesn't have to be anything other than, you know, these are humble stories. These are, you know, these are actually, you know, captured stories. It's going to be a historical, you know, capturing of different events and stories that you just can't find most anywhere else. And because it's live, most podcasts don't even do live anymore. So thanks to Brian Colburn and his genius way of putting me into the live scenario of things. Plus, I think we do it pretty good, so I appreciate it. Next week, I'm going to have Chris Harris on deck. He's known as the Warrior Maker, and you can find him on thewarriormaker.com in case you're wanting to see that. He's written like 7 books. He's a keynote speaker. I don't know him personally. I got hit up in a recent deal and asked to host him on my show. So I'm looking forward to that. So if you're looking forward to seeing that guy, I'm sure Chris Harris is probably an awesome guy. I don't know him, but I'm looking forward to getting to know him, and we'll see how that pans out. Chef, anything else?
Nope, that's it for today.
All right, thanks, brother. Hey, if you need to get a hold of me, if you need to get a hold of my guests or anybody that you've seen on here, feel free to hit me up at any given time, because this is such an important factor. And again, thanks for Brian Colburn at SitchRadio.com for doing the show, and the Veteran Transition Center for making the show even a possibility in this fashion. Till next time, this is Aaron Siebert signing off, and Chef JB, strength and honor.
Yeah,
out.
Strength and honor.
The only way, and we need nothing more. The only way, together forever, that's for sure.